They say life can change in the blink of an eye, and I used to nod politely when I heard that. But now I know exactly what they meant, because on a quiet afternoon in late autumn, I found myself standing at the edge of a cliff with my 4-year-old grandson, smiling at the world. And moments later, we were both tumbling into the void below. What I did next, well, even I still can't believe it. But let me take you there. Let me tell you everything. My name is David. I'm 62 years old, a retired firefighter, a father of 3, and a grandfather to one very curious little boy named Owen. Owen is the kind of child who looks at everything as if it holds a secret, a wonder, a story. And on that day, I swear it was his wonder that got us both into trouble and maybe even saved us. It started like any other Sunday. Owen was spending the weekend with me and my wife, Carol, and we decided to go hiking near Elk Ridge, a beautiful place not far from where we live in Montana. Carol stayed back to prep lunch while Owen and I set out to explore a new trail. He loved being in nature, the sound of birds, the rustle of the leaves, the crunch of his little boots on gravel. He called it our adventure time, and I called it heaven. I remember laughing when he insisted on holding the walking stick like an old man, mimicking the way I sometimes leaned on mine. The sun was out, the air was crisp, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. We were maybe 2 miles in when we reached the cliff. Now I'd been there before. It wasn't a dangerous place if you kept to the trail. But kids don't see boundaries. They see possibilities. And Owen, with his bright blue coat and tiny fingers pointing at a hawk circling above, edged closer to the side. "Papa, look! It's flying in circles!" I turned to look at the bird. 1 second. That's all it took. Because the next moment I heard a slip, a crunch, and then silence. He was gone. Instinct kicked in. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I jumped. That moment, the leap, is something I can't describe in full. It was pure terror wrapped in adrenaline. I didn't know how far he'd fallen, didn't know if he was alive. My only thought was, get to Owen. We tumbled through brush, rocks, dirt, and branches. My back slammed into something hard. I felt my leg twist unnaturally, but I barely noticed. Because a few feet away, lying among the dry grass, was my grandson. He was crying. That sound, that glorious sound, told me he was breathing, conscious, and at least partially okay. I crawled to him, my whole body aching, my mind racing. "Owen, buddy, you okay?" He nodded through tears, clutching his arm. I did a quick check. His arm looked broken, probably his wrist, but otherwise, miraculously, no major bleeding, no visible head trauma. I, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. My right leg was swelling fast, and I couldn't put weight on it. We were maybe 50 feet down, in a rocky outcrop with no visible way back up, and there was no cell reception. Now the real fight began. I ripped my jacket into strips to stabilize his arm. Every movement hurt. Every breath reminded me that something inside me wasn't right. My ribs were likely cracked, and my knee, possibly shattered. But none of that mattered, because I had a little boy who was scared, hurt, and looking to me to be strong. Nightfall would come in about 3 hours. The temperature would drop fast, and predators weren't uncommon. We needed shelter. We needed a plan. I remembered a small overhang not far from where we landed, something I'd seen during previous hikes. It would provide some protection, but getting there meant crawling. I carried Owen on my back as best I could, pushing forward inch by inch. I used the walking stick to drag my injured leg. My breath came in gasps. Owen kept asking, "Are we going to be okay, Papa?" And every time I said yes, even when I wasn't sure. When we reached the overhang, I set him down gently and told him stories to keep him distracted. I told him about dragons and knights, about how brave he was. He listened, wide-eyed, his head resting on my shoulder as night settled in. The cold was sharp, and I wrapped us both in what little we had. I kept tapping him every hour to make sure he stayed awake and alert. By morning, the pain in my leg was worse. I knew infection or internal damage was setting in, but something else happened that gave me hope. Owen, still hurting, pointed toward the sky. "Look, Papa, a bird. It's back." That hawk, or another like it, was circling again, and that gave me an idea. I took a piece of the silver lining from my emergency blanket and propped it up with sticks, hoping the reflection would catch someone's eye. I used my whistle every few minutes, and though my throat was dry and raw, I kept blowing. Hours passed. Then faintly, a shout. I blew the whistle again. Louder, another shout. Closer. And then, rescuers. The moment they reached us, I collapsed. My job was done. We were airlifted out. Owen had a fractured wrist and a few bruises. I had multiple injuries and spent nearly 2 months in recovery. But we survived. Together. The fall could have been the end of us. But it became a turning point. A reminder of resilience, love, and instinct. That cliff didn't just test our bodies. It tested our spirits. To this day, whenever Owen sees a hawk, he calls it his guardian bird. And every time he says it, I believe him. If you were moved by this story, if you believe in the strength of the human spirit, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts or similar experiences, and subscribe to this channel. We have more stories of survival, hope, and the unbreakable bonds that carry us through the darkest times. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes when you fall, you rise even stronger.